Hey, Dee, guess what happened 50 years ago this month?
Um, that was a long time ago. Let me guess. You checked out your first gardening book from the library.
That is an excellent guess, but no, 50 years ago, I attended my first and only Indy 500 race.
Well, good for you. Were you in a stroller?
No, I was in the high school band and you march in the parade and then you
Yeah.
march in the pre-race stuff and then they sit you in the back grandstands.
Oh, isn't that fun?
Yeah, and the race got rained out last time I saw it. The only time I saw it. Might be rained out today, but let's get started with this week's episode.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
And I'm Dean Ash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres way out in the country.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Dee. A rare Sunday morning recording.
It is. I went to church at 7:30 and you went to church last night. And so we're doing it today.
Yes, and so we were going to do it Friday and then we were going to do it Saturday. So I just kept adding to the stuff I did, but Dee, I am like a machine out there getting stuff done.
I know you are. Tell me all about it.
I got stuff planted at my sister's condo, at the neighborhood entrance, helped my neighbor plant a bunch of stuff. All the pots on my back patio are done. Switched out from the violas. I planted some perennials that I bought. That tree that I accidentally bought, I've planted
Yes,
it.
that one, the magnolia. Mhm.
Yeah, I planted it. Got seeds sown out in the vegetable garden for beans, cukes, squash, corn,
Oh,
plus
it's
some
going to be cute.
flowers. Still have a few more flower seeds to sow.
Uh huh.
Yesterday was Saturday. I decided I would go down to the farmer's market in Greenwood, stop by my nephew's house. He and his wife, she wants a couple of shrubs on the end of the patio or porch up front. So I
Uh huh.
stopped by to scope it out. They had these cute vintage rabbit statues on their porch. And I thought, oh, how cute. I'm so jealous. And she comes out and she says, do you want them? And I'm like, yes,
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
She says, we don't want them. Our neighbor gave them to us that was moving. They'd been there for like 40 years plus, or I guess, I don't know. And I'm like, my nephew, I says, yeah, I want them. And he says, I'll put them in the car for you. And so he trucked them over to the car and I was excited. Anyway, I mowed, I weeded. I did order an arbor, D,
You did? Good. Where?
from
From?
from Gardener Supply. I looked at Garden
Uh-huh.
Artesian. I thought, Carol done got that kind of money. Anyway, I ordered one from Gardener Supply because I remembered I wanted to grow scarlet runner beans and gourds. So it's going to go between two beds in the vegetable garden cathedral so I can see the quality and all that before I buy two more to see if I'm going to put them up by the patio. So I'm waiting for that to arrive. And it didn't arrive, but another package arrived and I'll tell you about it, but I've been talking too long.
Well, I'm glad you talked because I forgot I also need to put in cucumbers. So that leads right into my deal, which is so for my anniversary, Bill bought me these, some more of those Vigo, however you pronounce it, beds. And they're the little kid version, which fits at the end of each one of my other beds. So
Cool.
there's eight of them. And they're not that little, but they call them the children's garden, the first garden. And they're the same height as the other ones. And I finished putting together two of those. And then Bill did a couple for me. And then I did two videos about that and no, not about that. That's not what I did. I'm sorry. Masha is driving me crazy over here. Leave me alone, Masha. I did a lot of deadheading. I did a lot of Chelsea chopping. And I showed people in two different Instagram videos how to do those things. Okay. And so I'm really glad you showed me how to prop up my phone onto my gardening fork with tape. She's going to knock something off if we're not careful. And then I was able to do it because Bill hasn't been able to be my videographer because he had surgery. So he hasn't felt good. I've also been weeding, and I was thinking about those, not cauliflower. What is wrong with me this morning?
I don't know.
Cucumbers. The cucumber seeds. I thought, oh yeah, I can put those in those beds and do them up the up the hog fencing. And then I'm going to plant my beans there. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to. And then I planted some more pepper plants and some
Cool.
more Mexican feathergrass. And I only have four plants left to plant. Four, only four.
That's pretty darn good. I have 4 things left to plant. 3. 3 things.
Oh, I also went through my tomatoes that are planted in those beds and I pinched out the suckers, which we have talked about that before, but you want to pinch out those suckers because they don't produce fruit. You can leave a few to shade your tomatoes so they don't get sun scald. But these tomatoes are nice and leafy, I think because they're indeterminate. So, there you go. I blame this all on Masha because she was just now trying to get my drawer too. And then can I just whine for just a second?
Yes, because you whine, then I'll switch the tone to something positive with my package.
Oh, so my quick whine is this is part of the ugly, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I am having so much trouble with my cut flower gardens this spring, my flower beds. Between the cutworms have been ferocious. And even when I've stuck stuff down next to them, like say a big nail or a plant tag, they've been climbing up that and then cutting off the plant above the tag. They've been that bad.
That's terrible.
They've been terrible. And then I've been having trouble with something else that's been eating my basil. And we've also had a lot of torrential rain, and I live on a hill. So even in the raised beds, all of my zinnia seeds go down to the bottom of those beds, even though they're only 4x4. So that's okay. Now tell me your good thing, and then I'm going to tell you my good thing.
So yesterday, I got a package in the mail, and I knew the package was coming because I get the alerts from the Postal Service.
Yeah, me too.
And I thought, what did I order? So the package came. I did not order
I know what you got. I know what you got.
You do, because I'm thinking, I bet Dee gave Sharon Lovejoy my address.
I did.
She sent me a box of actual forks, not the plastic ones, with a really cute little bouquet of little tiny flowers. And she said that a garden diva like me needed real forks, not plastic forks, for my fork truss around my beans. And I thought, what good timing, because I planted the bean rows, but I still have to set up all the forks. And I'm like, now I have these lovely, lovely real forks. So I got to send Sharon a thank you note, but that was just a wonderful surprise to get in the mail yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't know it had come yet. I'm excited. She asked me for your address. And she said, you can't breathe a word. And I said, I won't breathe a word.
You were very good. You didn't breathe a word. I had no idea.
That was really cool. So while Bill's been recovering, I gave myself a present because I've been taking care of him and it's not been easy. And so I bought myself 2 more roses because Heirloom Roses had their roses on sale for the weekend. And I ordered Celestial Night and Sunbelt Plum Perfect. I have Sunbelt Savannah that I planted this year. That rose is fabulous. It's disease resistant, has these beautiful blooms that look like camellias. And Sunbelt Plum Perfect, Teresa Byington also says is good. And then I tried to grow Celestial Night for my mother after she passed away, and I killed it somehow. So yes, I do kill things sometimes. And so I'm buying it again. I'm going to try it again. And so those were my presents for myself. Anyway, that's my updates. Shall we play favorites?
We shall play favorites. Go ahead.
So my favorites this week, get that? I said favorites. They're right next to each other, so it counts, are nasturtiums and calendula. They are blooming with abandon. We've had some really good rain, and where it's washed all my seeds away, it has not washed these away because I started them indoors.
Cool.
And planted them out, and they are beautiful together. And I'll get the names of the 2 varieties when I do the newsletter this week. And they're gorgeous together, and I'll put the picture in the newsletter. So what are you? I love your favorite, by the way.
By the way, I'll say on the nasturtiums, I planted a row of nasturtiums when I planted the squash the other day, and I used seeds that I had gotten from the library seed library.
Yeah.
It wasn't a sale. They're just free. They're just free.
Oh, that's right. It was just a pickup deal.
Yeah. Yeah. You just go and they're there. So
what kind were they?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, I know what one of mine was.
What was it?
One of them is vintage, and it is really beautiful. Really beautiful. Anyway, keep going. What about them?
I don't know the variety. It's on the packet. I'll have to go look at it. Probably
But you were
jewel mix for the
Jewel's
nasturtium.
nice.
Jewel
Yeah.
mix, probably. They won't start really blooming and they won't really have their heyday until fall. But that is not my favorite this week.
Hmm.
My
I know.
favorite is Spigelia marylandica, which is known as Indian pinks, which is
Or,
a
uh-huh.
lovely, lovely red flower with a yellow tip. It's blooming now out in my soon to be too shady for prairie garden, but it's blooming in there and it looks lovely and I love it.
Yeah, here they like a little shade. They'll take morning sun, but they like a little shade. And it's a great plant. I have it everywhere. And if you deadhead it, it'll bloom again, which is
Yeah.
even cooler.
And I put that
And
on Instagram and one of our old blogging people, Prairie Rose over there in
oh yeah,
Illinois,
Rose. I love Rose.
she left a comment that she doesn't deadhead hers and it reblooms anyway.
Well, mine, it doesn't do that for me. It kind of tries to make seed. So I go ahead and and mine's blooming right now too, which is interesting that we're overlapping. I do have something to say about your nasturtium thing. You said that they won't be looking like much till fall. We can only grow them in the spring.
Right.
Or I guess if you started them indoors, you could also have them in the fall. But I don't want anybody in the southern states to think that they can, take care of them all summer and that they'll be no. They don't like our hot weather. But they are beautiful in the spring. And I think I like these so well because they coordinate. The colors are reds, oranges, and yellows, which coordinate exactly with the calendula that I picked this year. And did I do that on purpose? No, it was just an accident.
D, first rule of a happy accident is to claim that you did it on purpose.
I'm not going to do it. I'm going
Ah,
to, I wish. Most of the stuff that looks extra good here, God plants it. I mean, I plant it, but God goes, hey, Dee, buy that particular variety. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know how that works. It just happens. Anyway, we have a question of the week.
we do. The question is that everybody starts asking because, it's Memorial Day weekend and people say, is it too late? Is it too late to plant this? Is it too late to plant that? And the answer is, it all
Maybe.
depends. It's not too late for summer crops like beans and squash. It's
Nope.
not too late for annuals and perennials as long as you're willing to water because, things start to get dry. It's not
Yep.
too late for trees and shrubs, though fall is a better time. You can plant now, but again, you need to make sure to water.
Hmm.
But it is probably a little late for peas, lettuce, and spinach. My radishes have bolted.
It is way too late here. My peas, I walked out yesterday and I was looking at them and they're done. My radishes bolted 3 weeks ago. And so I have moved on to the summer garden. My lettuce is in the process of bolting. It's in my cold frames, some of it. I have a little bit in the shade, and I thought I might test it just to see if it hasn't gotten so hot that it's turned bitter. Because you can buy no bolt lettuce, but in my state, if you eat it, it'll not bolt, but it'll be so bitter you can't stand it.
Yeah. So here, my lettuce, it's coming to an end, but it's been delicious. So anyway, the question of is it too late is asked at this time, and the answer is it depends.
It depends. And so if you want to plant your pots though, you've still got time
Yeah, you got
for
time.
both of us, as long as you water them. I have to say that to everybody. That'll do great as long as you water it because we're hot here. All right, we are talking about a very exciting plant that a lot of people ask about for our flower. Oh my
And
gosh, I get asked about it all the time.
I'm going to do the quote to send us into
Oh,
it.
I'm so sorry. I skipped over you.
I shall learn spring by heart, and that is Elizabeth Goode. And you know that this is the summer of Elizabeth Goode's reading, so I picked that quote.
Yeah, she's great.
Now do the flower.
Our flower is lavender, and you went to Monrovia and got some really good information. In fact, you got a piece of information I did not know about lavender, even though I have grown lavender forever. It's down at the end.
Okay. Well, let's just go through. We've talked about lavender before, but let's go through the three basic types that you're going to find for sale at your local garden center. And that is English lavender, cold hardy, zones 5 to 10. Typically, we might get to be pretty tall, like 2 feet tall. I don't think it'll get to 3 feet around here, although maybe I've got some out there. And then there's French lavender, which
Mhm.
is highly fragrant. And, you think of the beautiful fields in France, which I've never seen these.
Provence. Provence is one
Provence.
of the most popular varieties of French lavender. And one of my favorites is a sport of a French lavender. It was found in a garden. It's found in Lloyd Traven's garden, Lloyd and Cindy, and it's called Phenomenal. And Phenomenal gets huge. And I cut it back twice a year. I cut it back in spring and I cut it back after it blooms. And that stuff, it is phenomenal and it can handle a lot of humidity. It does die off, but it's worth growing. And so that's
So,
one I really like.
yeah, so let's talk about that. So it's supposedly hardy from zones 4 to 8. And when you say it dies off, you mean it like some perennials after a few years, it fades away and it's done.
Yeah, I have a little section that I took a picture of and put in my latest blog post and said, see, you aren't the only one who kills lavender. I still kill it. But you know what? You just replace it with another one and go on with your life. But you want to be careful about where you plant lavender. It's not the easiest thing to grow. But I think phenomenal of all the lavenders out there, I think it is the easiest of them. And I actually saw it for a few places for sale. So it's now getting out into commerce. Used to be you had to order it from High Country Gardens. But I actually saw it at the greenhouse. That's the name of the greenhouse in Norman last year. So I'm looking at our book because and I'm not getting ahead of myself. She's pointing her finger at me because she's afraid I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm not. I'm looking up the lavender royal velvet because that was one of her favorites. And I want to say that royal velvet is also a French lavender,
It
but
is,
I'm not,
I
is it?
think. I think it
I,
is.
that's why I'm looking it up to be sure. So, what else do you want to say about French lavender?
Not much. Most of the lavender I have, I believe, is English lavender, but I don't have this phenomenal lavender, and I think I'm going to give it a try if I can. If I stumble across it at the garden center somewhere, I think I'll grab it and try it. Because I did grab and try, and I brought the tag in here so that I could. And this is an English lavender. I am trying a lavender called Platinum Blonde, which I picked up because it's variegated leaves.
Yes, it's beautiful. I've actually grown it. I killed it, but eventually, but
Yeah,
okay, so I'm looking. So Royal Velvet is a lavandula angustifolia. So
that's in
does that make
English.
it English? Okay, so
Yes,
Royal Velvet is English, and I guess I thought Phenomenal was also English, but apparently it's French. So yeah, because lavandula times intermedia Provence is definitely French. And then I've also grown Grosso. Grosso does well in my garden too. I was going to say about Royal Velvet quickly that it is short. So if you need a small lavender for a small garden, it's a great one. Has great big heads. It's beautiful. I think if I shear it, it comes back. I do want to talk about one other lavender too that I also think is French. And I have a blog post about lavenders because one year I tested 10 different ones and I will add that to the newsletter. So it's called How to Grow Lavender in Oklahoma or something like that. And there's one in there, there's an unnamed lavender, but it is named. And it's a Bonnie, it's sold by Bonnie Plants.
uh-huh.
Okay. But Bonnie Plants sells two different kinds of lavender. They sell a Spanish lavender, which we were going to talk about next, and they sell a French type. If you can find the French type, it's unnamed, but it is a named lavender. It's fabulous. It's lighter blue than phenomenal. And it grows like gangbusters and it grows nice and tall, just like phenomenal. And I'll take a picture of it because I have two of them together and
Okay.
they are beautiful. So I wanted to make sure I mention that one too, because it's a good one and it's cheap. Phenomenal's not cheap. It's still pretty expensive.
Yeah. So the third type is Spanish lavender. Now this is the one that has the bigger flowers,
The puff
and
heads.
people have it in containers and stuff, and it will not overwinter in Indiana. It's zone 7 to 9. And so
It
I've
won't
had
here either.
people who were disappointed that my lavender didn't live. And I realized that they've grown a Spanish lavender. And so it really is here. It really is a nice container plant. And you'll see them also for sale sometimes, like in the grocery store floral section as a potted
Yes,
flowering plant,
I
different
buy them
times of the
then.
year.
Yeah.
But they're nice. Not as fragrant, but
You know what I like about I like their foliage. It's a little different and it's very gray and it has a little different leaf shape. And I just think they're pretty and they look really good in pots. And they're one of the things you can grow here really well in terracotta, which there isn't much. I do want to mention Sweet Romance, which is an angustifolia, and it's a proven winner's variety. And they have been able to select or something for this one where it has the big bract on top because I've grown
right?
it several times, but it is not a Spanish one. It's actually English, but it has that look. But the foliage looks English. So that's another good one too. There's a lot of breeding and selection going on in lavender right now. And it's for a very good reason. I mean, they're doing some real improvement to it. So I think, try some new ones,
Yeah.
but
And
don't plant them in clay.
yeah. So let's talk about how to successfully grow lavender.
So do you want to quickly talk about the Portuguese lavender, though? I kind of messed you up
No, that's
because
okay. I
I
mean,
I never heard of it before.
it's I haven't really seen it for sale anywhere, but I think it's apparent in a lot of the hybrids that they're
I do
coming
too.
up with. And so you might run into it's lavendula latifolia. It's not one. I don't think you're going to find it as except as a parent of a hybrid. So I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, I think I didn't know there was Portuguese lavender. I've been to Portugal, but I didn't know they had lavender that was their own. Okay, so how to grow it? It needs very sharp drainage.
Very
Very
sharp
sharp.
drainage. Do not mulch around your lavender. No
Nope.
mulch.
Crown rot. You'll get crown rot if you do.
Yes.
Also, don't put your drip irrigation, like in my case, most of my lavender borders my potager. And I think it really loves those concrete blocks because I think they leach a little alkalinity in the soil. And that lavender just loves being right next to them. Plus, they're hot, they like that heat. And I don't put my drip irrigation next to them, I put it away from them so they don't get much water. I literally water it in and then I let it just whatever extra water it gets after everything else is watered is all it gets all summer and all winter too, whatever little bit I water in winter. I think you can kill lavender faster with bad drainage and too much water than any other way.
That is true. And the lavender I have, I mean, I don't have drip irrigation around my garden and stuff, but I tend to find sunny spots that tend to dry out pretty quick, and that's where I stick it. And I've already picked a picture out for the newsletter. The lavender back in my vegetable garden, which we've talked about, that grows right beside this huge big rock.
Yeah.
And with no attention, I mean, I didn't do anything to it. I didn't even shear it or anything. It just looks great year after year after year. And I have no
Wonder
idea the
what type it
variety.
is. Yeah, I
No
wonder what type.
idea. I've talked about this before, but there's a woman, Carolee Snyder, who used to have an herb farm up by Muncie, Indiana, and I would run into her at trade shows and stuff, or not trade shows, but garden fairs. And she had a big lavender area, and she said she trialed every single lavender that she could find. And so I literally bought this 3-inch pot of lavender, two different
Right.
ones. And one was almost a whitish bloom, and the other one is the one I have the picture of. I think the whitish one, I've got to go look a little bit more, may have finally died itself out, or this one took it over.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, that grows really well. And she's the one that, by experimentation and stuff, she realized never mulch your lavender, all blah, blah, blah. So she really worked at finding good varieties for this climate, the Midwest.
Right. And you need to know your climate. And I'll say, just for me, phenomenal. The unnamed French one of Bonnie's and Grosso. And then after that, Royal Velvet, which is a dwarf. I have killed Hidcote and Munstead. Oh, I can't tell you how many times. And
Yeah.
I grow the Spanish one. Sometimes you can find it as a topiary with a little puffball, like a standard. And
Yeah.
it's got a little puffball on top. I don't dig topiaries, but I do love topiary and Spanish lavender. I'm not a very reasonable gardener. I just like what I like.
Now, remember last spring,
Yes.
I grew lavender from seed for a Family Handyman
Yes.
article. I'll see if I can find that and we can put a link in the newsletter. But I ended up with, I don't know, 20 seedlings. And then I kind of potted them in a couple of pots together. And then late last fall, probably later than you really want to transplant lavender to get it established, I just planted it out in this row. And there's 3 or 4 of them that came back and they look pretty good. But I grew
Who
them from
knew?
seed.
Go you. What
Now,
variety were they? Do you know?
they were just labeled English lavender.
Huh.
But
Interesting.
the really interesting part is I actually bought one that was labeled Hidcoat, and those didn't germinate for me. These all germinated. And so I would not hesitate to try growing lavender again. I started these indoors. I might try winter sowing. I don't know. But anyway, I would try them. I would try them.
I will say that royal velvet reseeds in my garden because somebody around here has honeybees, and honeybees love lavender, as do bumblebees and carpenter bees and butterflies. Everybody loves lavender. Because I have so many pollinators, I actually get baby ones and then I transplant them around the edge of the garden. So I've never had Phenomenal do that, but I've had the royal velvet do it. So there you go.
Cool. All right. I
Cool.
think that's enough about our enthusiasm for lavender. Let's move on
Well,
to the next quote and the vegetable topic.
and the spring arose on the garden fair, like the spirit of love felt everywhere. And each flower and herb on earth's dark breast rose from the dreams of its wintry rest. And that's from Percy Shelley, because I don't know how to pronounce his middle name and I'm not even going to try. So there you go. He was married to, what's her name? Mary Shelley,
I believe so.
who wrote Frankenstein. Go figure. Vegetables.
When she was about 18, go figure.
Yeah, go
Anyway,
figure. It's a heck of a story. And it's a really good book if you've never read it. Okay, vegetables.
so we thought we had this brainstorm last week because finding vegetable garden topics that are like not the Department of Redundancy department.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, let's do our top 5 books that every vegetable gardener ought to have in no specific order. And so I think I have 6 listed in the top 5. And then we came up with a few more. And
Mhm.
apologies to any living authors who thought, where's our book? Where's my book? This is just like top of mind today. Tomorrow it could change.
Well, and it's also because it's stuff that influenced us.
Yeah.
So we might not, I mean, we're past beginning, and some of them are for beginners and some aren't. And we didn't even include my book, which is okay. That's the way it
And we
goes.
didn't include my books, which is also
Right.
okay because they're not really about
Exactly.
vegetable gardening.
Well, mine is, but I just thought of that just now. I thought, well, I didn't include mine, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. I think certain books speak to you. And, I'm tired of my book actually, because I promoted it for years. All right. So the first one that we talked about is Plant Partners, Science-Based Companion Planting Strategies for the Vegetable Garden by Jessica Walliser. And we talk about this book a lot because the truth is it's a really good book and she's an entomologist and she just knows a lot about insects.
Right.
And she knows a lot about planting and companion planting, and she's a good editor and it's just really well written. It's a
Yeah,
good
and
book.
it's well researched. And so on the cover it says minimize disease, reduce pest, improve soil fertility, support pollination. And so I have often turned to this book to get a specific question answered, like would those two things do well together? Or she's the reason why I plant nasturtiums next to all of my squash plants because the
They're a trap
nasturtium,
cop.
anyway, that's one
They're
of
a trap cop. And what I like about that book in particular is that she has different reasons for planting companions, because usually the companion planting stuff is, does one enhance the growing of another?
right.
Like the Three Sisters idea, or does it repel certain insects, which, although this has been slightly disproven, marigolds with tomatoes, for example, that's something people do. I still plant marigolds with tomatoes just because I love it together. I think
Right.
it's beautiful. But this also has other reasons you plant things together. And I thought it was one of the best books to come out. It thinks about it in a different way. So the next one is, here we go. And this one, oh, no. I want to do yours and then we'll do the one I did. All right,
Okay.
ready?
So
You got it?
I put the Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook on there, and there's actually another one. This is by Susan Mulvihill. She also wrote the
Yes,
Vegetable Garden Problem Solver Handbook. These are fairly recent,
they're
and
good.
I would they're not difficult, as far as, you don't have to be an advanced gardener. I would put these on a new gardener's bookshelf to say, because as soon as you plant it, there will be pests. Like you said, the cutworms
Absolutely.
came after your flowers. There
Yes.
will be diseases, there will be other problems. And so she addresses those in these two books, which
Mhm.
she came out one year after the next. So she was a one hardworking writer.
I think what she did is she worked on both of them at the same time and she had so much data that she wrote a second book. I think that's what she did.
Yeah,
Susan, can I just say, Susan also has an Instagram and she talks about pests in her Instagram.
she does.
And she did a really good job this past week. And I shared it on my Instagram because I wanted her to get more followers. It was about aphids. And I thought it was really, really good.
And it's her methods are all organic. There's no like grab this chemical or
No, yeah. In fact, a lot of times it's do nothing, which I got to say the aphid one that she was showing the aphids on, good Lord, they were they were pulsing. Have you ever heard of that? Pulsating?
pulsing.
Yeah, they were pulsating on this
No,
plant. It
no.
was it was something else. And I was like, ooh, that is so weird, but so cool. And she goes, yeah, isn't it creepy? And I go, yeah. So those are very good books. So can I do the next one?
You
You've got
can.
another book out. What book
I
do you
got
have
this.
out? Oh, the same one I have out. Yes. Rosalind Creasy wrote, you're just such a show off. Stop it. You have to tell people what you just showed me.
So it's Edible Landscaping by Rosalind Creasy, how you can have your gorgeous garden and eat it too. And this is one of the most lovely books. And Dee and I probably both got them at the same time at the same Garden Writers Conference. Our books are both signed by Rosalind. So I'm
Yeah,
not
but
really,
she was trying to say that hers was and mine wasn't. And luckily mine was. I was really glad.
I knew it
I,
was.
I don't know how you knew it was. I didn't know we bought those together. We bought way too many books, Carol. Let me just say this about Rosalind. She was one of the first people who said it is okay to plant your front borders and your front garden with edible plants. And you can make
Yes.
it beautiful too. And it is important to me to have a beautiful vegetable garden. And I think a lot of it has to do with Rosalind.
Yes. And her book,
Go, Rosalind.
it's,
This is a beautiful book. People should definitely buy it.
yeah, it's still in print. I checked. And so on all these books, if it's still in print, I've got the bookshop.org link and I've
And
also
the
got the
Amazon.
Amazon link. They'll be in the newsletter. There's too many of them to put in the show notes.
Okay, so this next book is your book, but I'm the one who said you've got to include it in there because you met him at one of our very first conferences, and it was like meeting your favorite mentor.
So this is Homegrown Vegetables, Fruits, and Herbs, a Bountiful, Healthful Garden for Lean Times. And it is by the infamous Jim Wilson of the Victory Garden. I went to my
Yes,
first Garden Writers Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2009, I think. And the book wasn't quite out, but I go to this trade show and there's Jim Wilson sitting at a table and he has some samples of what the pages are going to look like. And
right.
I I refrained from bowing in reference to the great Jim Wilson. He was just sitting there, nicest guy you ever meet. And then we get on the buses to go to a garden, and Jim Wilson gets on the bus, and I'm like, wonder why they don't have a limousine for that guy. Anyway, I had my picture taken with him, and it was just delightful. But if longtime watchers of Victory Garden remember, Jim Wilson was always at the Southern Victory Garden, and he wrote this book. He passed away shortly after it came out. And by the way, Walter Chandoa,
Uh-huh.
famous photographer, mostly famous for his photographs of cats, believe it or
Yes,
not. But
weird.
he has also passed away. But it's just a really good book. It's still in print. I would put it at a fairly basic level. If you're new to vegetable gardening, this is a great book to get.
But let me just say that fairly basic level. Okay, so everyone, usually vegetable gardening or houseplants is how you get into gardening, almost always, right?
Right.
And of the two, vegetable gardening is much, much harder than houseplants. And I can't tell you how many people they get too many plants, too big a garden. There's just things they do because they're so excited. And most vegetables are annuals, and so you have to keep picking them to keep them producing. And they're they're pest ridden by creatures. I mean, they just have issues. And so I think having a good basic vegetable gardening book is essential because yeah, it's not as easy to be a vegetable gardener, in my opinion, as it is just to be a landscape gardener. But that's just my personal opinion, unless you try to grow really hard stuff. The next one on our list is The New Heirloom Garden by Ellen Ector Ogden. This came out. I was trying to look while you were talking about Jim's book, but I didn't get there. It either came out last year or the year before.
I think it came out 3 or 4 years ago, Dee.
That long ago? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, time does go by fast.
It
Anyway,
does indeed.
great book. Also contains information about very basic things, but then it shows things like a potager, a parterre type potager. It is the most beautiful because she knows what she's doing on this, and just the pictures are beautiful. I want to say, does it say who photographed it? Maybe Ellen photographed it. I don't know. It doesn't say. All the beautiful varieties. This picture of the lettuce gathered with the edible flowers from another like cole crop. So it would be like your Brussels sprout flowers or
right.
your cauliflower flowers or mustard flowers. That is the most beautiful picture. And it just goes with the idea that you can grow a beautiful garden and it can be a vegetable garden and it can have flowers and herbs and all kinds of things and just be beautiful. So I love this one. And all of these, I think, are heirloom varieties.
Yes.
Because that's what she's known for.
Yeah. I forgot to pull that one off the shelf. But when I was pulling the other books off the shelf, I thought, Dee, how can we talk about some of our favorite books without once again saying The Chef's Garden.
Mm-hmm.
By Farmer Lee Jones, a modern guide to common and unusual vegetables with recipes. Farmer Lee Jones with Kristen Donnelly.
Thick, one of the best.
Expensive, but
worth every penny.
Yes.
Because we bought it. It was not sent to us for review.
No.
And we hesitated buying it, and we got it through the library first. And then we fell in love with it so much that we both paid $50 for it. And it is expensive, but it is worth every penny because not so much the recipes, but the unusual varieties that this man and his staff grow. And just his enthusiasm for vegetable gardening is wonderful. And he also has a beautiful Instagram that I have the bell turned on so that I never miss a post. And I still miss a few just because, it happens. So that's our top 6 in no particular order because we love them all. But here's our others because we really couldn't, we couldn't. So the first one is Rodale's Growing Fruits and Vegetables the Organic Way. One of the great sadnesses in my life is that the Organic Garden magazine is gone. Yeah. And Rodale published it for years and then eventually it got bought out. So How to Grow Vegetables and Fruits the Organic Method by this group, this consortium, is amazing.
It is. And this we talked about. Old. Yeah. This is the first gardening book I checked out of the library, probably when I was in elementary school. And
we need to do a video of this because when people see how thick this book is, that you were in elementary school and felt it. And I bet it doesn't have many pictures because this is before that was popular.
It has black and white pictures. So it first came out, I don't know. Well, that's a Roman numeral, but it's several iterations of it. And there are some funny stories about old time gardeners and stuff. But whenever I see this at like a antique mall or someplace, a used copy, I always buy it. So I have 2 copies now, and I've given away a couple copies. What do you do with
it? Will you give it away? I don't have that book on my bookshelf. Do not send it to me. It's too big. It's too everything. I have enough books.
I think the last versions came out in the 70s, but I believe the first one came out, I'm going to say 58, 59, 60, somewhere when I was a kid. But
That
anyway,
sounds about right because that's when all that became popular. I mean, that goes right, that should sit right next to their book on compost on your bookshelf if you're going to have it. So the next one is The Little Kitchen Garden, and it's by Dorothy Giles. And then you wrote Ha Ha Kidding, 1908, but useful in its own way. Why is it useful in its own way, Carol?
she's very pragmatic about gardening and she just very, I say pragmatic and practical. And she's just like, you do this, you do that, you et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I liked it. And, I did buy some tomato varieties and an okra variety and some bean varieties because she had recommended them in her book. I sourced them, some peppers. So I'm growing a bunch of the varieties that she had listed in her book. So it was an influential book on me, at least this last winter.
There you go. And then our next one is The Garden Primer, the completely revised Gardener's Bible, 100% organic by Barbara Damrush. We talked about Barbara Damrush last week and Theme Gardens, which was my very first gardening book. This was my first real vegetable gardening book. It still is great. It does still mention double digging, which nobody really has to do anymore. But I think that other than that, it is a very solid source if you're interested in it. There's so many good. That book just means a lot to me because, well, I grew, it's my book. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tried to find that on my shelf. I couldn't find it. It wasn't in the right section. That doesn't mean I don't have it, but
It was sent to me as a proof, to review. So that's why I have another copy of it.
now I'm
Then
jealous you have the next book because you have it.
that
I
book,
don't.
I do. I have it. And you know what? It's a great book. It's How to Have a Green Thumb Without an Aching Back by Ruth Stout. And Ruth Stout is the sister of Rex Stout. And Rex Stout was the mystery writer. And Ruth is a great writer in her own. And she is sassy and funny. And that book right there started the whole lasagna gardening movement, which a friend of ours later wrote the lasagna gardening book. But Ruth thought of the ideas first. And it's all about layering and how you don't have to dig everything in order to have a really good garden. But it's written with a lot of humor and whimsy because, well, Ruth and Rex were both brilliant people.
So I saw that you can buy a
Good used copy.
facsimile. It sounds like a facsimile, like they copied the pages, like literally photocopied for like $12. And I'm like, I don't know if I want that. I put a link to it, but I would prefer to get an original copy. Put
You'll
that
get
on
it.
my
I mean,
list.
mine's a paperback, and it's one that a reprint, and it's really old because she wrote this a long, long time ago.
Yes, she did.
Mine's a reprint, and I got it off of eBay a long time ago. So it's a great book. I read it because I love Rex Stout, and then I heard that his sister wrote a gardening book, and then it turned out to be way more than that. So that's our vegetable topic this week. We've given people some options, and there are lots of good new modern
There are
vegetable gardening
tons,
books
old
too,
and new.
tons.
Yes, tons.
But these are ones that really meant something to us. So
Yes.
there you go.
All right, I'll do a quote and take us onto the bookshelf.
Because we haven't talked about books enough.
What one loves in childhood stays in their heart forever. Mary Jo Putney.
And I think Sharon Lovejoy sent us that one, but
I think she
it's
did.
beautiful.
It is.
So on our bookshelf, we tie this whole thing together with the Lavender Companion. Enjoy the aroma, flavor, and health benefits of this classic herb by Terry Barlin. And I'm going to pronounce this, I hope, fully right. It's either Vesci or Vesky. I don't know which one.
And
read
wait a minute,
the whole
wait a minute.
thing.
She has a co-author, which I didn't put in the show notes, with
Jessica
Dunham.
Dunham. Yeah, because she's a chef and a farmer. She's a flower farmer. So she doesn't really have time to write books all by herself. But you can tell that she definitely wrote this because it has lots of good flower farmer wisdom in it.
Yes.
And I read the whole thing. I sat down and read it during lunch the other day, and I learned more about lavender, and I've grown it a long, long time.
Yes. And I think it is a beautiful book, lots of beautiful pictures.
Oh, so beautiful.
The crafts, braiding, bath salts, lavender sachets, also how to use in cooking. One of the best lemonades I ever drank was a lavender lemonade. It
Mhm.
was so
I can see that.
refreshing on a hot day. This book comes out May 28th, and this episode comes out May 29th. So you can be one of the first people to own this book. And we were sent a copy from Story Publishing, and we thank them for that.
I'm really glad that they asked us about it. She teaches you how to extract lavender essential oil. She teaches you how to make a face wash, a face oil, which a lot of people I know do make their own cosmetic oils and stuff, partly because of alpha gal syndrome, because there's so much stuff in cosmetics that has mammal in it. And so this way they can control the ingredients and not break out. That would be nice. And then on top of that, she has a whole section of recipes that you can eat. And what I learned is certain lavenders are better for making facial oils and some are better to cook with. And
I
she
would
tells
get
you
that.
which ones to do with what. And I thought, well, that's brilliant. And she tells you how to make dried lavender bouquets. It goes lavender sugar, which is one of the easiest things to make. Simple syrup is easy too. Oh, look at this lavender peach jam. I don't have a peach tree anymore, but boy, that'd be good. Wouldn't be hard to make either. It looks like it's super easy. So beautiful book. Beautiful.
Yeah, I was captured by lavender chocolate cake.
Yeah, that would be good too. I've made lavender shortbread. It was delicious.
So anyway,
So
that is The Lavender Companion. Enjoy the aroma, flavor, and health benefits of the classic herb by Terry Barlin Vesey and Jessica Dunham, and is from our friends at Story. Dee, staying on your bookshelf?
absolutely. Yeah. Never get rid
Oh,
of this one.
going to be sitting by my chair for a while I look stuff up. But yes, it's a keeper.
So I'll do the next quote. And it's a poem. "'Tis like the birthday of the world when earth was born and blue. The light is made of many dyes. The air is all perfume. There's crimson buds and white and blue. The very rainbow showers have turned to blossoms where they fell and sown the earth with flowers." And this is by Thomas Hood. It is part of a poem called "O Lady, Leave Thy Silken Thread." I think he's trying to call a lovely lady away from her embroidery to go out in the garden with him.
I believe so. That is a beautiful poem. I really like that. So our
I do
dirt.
too.
I found our dirt, Dee.
Cool.
So an English gardener finds a rock in his garden while he's weeding, and it's inscribed, and they think it was inscribed 1,600 years ago in some ancient script, and somebody was able to identify it.
Mhm.
And so we'll link to that. It was just a fun article. And it's like that is why you weed. And that is why gardeners always look at the rocks that they might accidentally dig up. And he said it wasn't very deep in the garden. I mean, it was right there.
Hmm.
So anyway, that was really very interesting. And I enjoyed that. And it reminded me of two things. Those mud larkers, is that what they're called? Yeah.
Yep.
They go out to the Thames River when the tide is out, and they scratch through all the rocks and they find bits of history and everything.
Mhm.
And then the next thing, I watched this video from this guy, and I've talked about him before, that does historic Southern Indiana.
Mhm.
And he did one about all these ancient artifacts that have been found in Southern Indiana, but then have disappeared
Interesting.
when sent off to like certain museums. It's like suddenly they're gone, and they're not in the catalog. Nobody can find them. And it's like they didn't exist, even though there's newspaper reports of all this stuff.
That's
And
weird.
it's very conspiratorial. I'll just say that.
Yeah. World is full of conspiracies, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is that about? What is idle hands that make the devil's workshop? Maybe idle
That,
brain. Idle brain creates conspiracies. But anyway, we
but anyway,
digress.
when you're digging for weeds or pulling weeds out and you've run into a rock, be sure to look to see if it's been inscribed 1,600 years ago. And with that, I'll do the quote. The chief beauty about time is that you cannot waste it in advance. The next year, the next day, the next hour are lying ready for you, as perfect, as unspoiled, as if you had never wasted or misapplied a single moment in all your life. You can turn over a new leaf every hour if you choose. Arnold Bennett.
That's really deep and cool.
It's very deep. How about your rabbit hole? You went deep in a rabbit hole.
I was all about the Chelsea Flower Show last week,
I
and I
guess
still
you
am.
were.
I have not watched them all because I love the Chelsea Flower Show. I got to go once in 2015. You'll never forget it. And I've been to the Hampton Court Show too, but it's just not the same. So I watched most of the BBC coverage on BritBox. It did get a little repetitive. And then Sherry Ely, who is a longtime listener and friend, she shared on the Garden Angeles Garden Club. Yes, we have a garden club on Facebook. She shared a lady named Stephanie, and her channel on YouTube is Stephanie's Grand Tour of Europe. And she had a video about the show, and it was even better than the official RHS coverage and the BritBox coverage, which is Gardener's World. And she visited a lot of the smaller gardens, which I enjoyed. I got kind of tired between you and me of seeing the two big gardens. Um,
Right.
I mean, there were like 6 or 7 big gardens, but there were two in particular that the Gardener's World staff just they were on them a lot, and I was like, okay, already. But these, she shared some really small ones, and then the actual people who put together the gardens, not just the designer, but the people who put them together that installed them, that's who she interviewed in some of them. And that was so good. And one of them was the Bridgerton garden, named after Bridgerton, the show, which kind of took the world by storm. And it is such a clever garden. And when you got to hear all about it, I don't know, it was just really clever. And a lot of these gardens, some of the small ones, some of the big ones, are dedicated to specific causes, like people with muscular dystrophy or whatever.
Right.
And so they explained all that. I loved it. So I want to say thank you, a special thank you to Sherry, because I sat down and watched the whole thing yesterday. And I think there's some more too. And then this lady also goes and visits a bunch of gardens in England. So that was fun too. And she interviewed the guy who's in charge of the National Trust
Uh-huh.
for the gardens. And they have the National Trust Garden at Chelsea this year is named after the woman who started she was in charge of the first National Trust Gardens. So that was
Cool.
really cool. And so Bill and I sat and watched the whole thing. It was awesome. Your turn.
So while I read, I do listen to audiobooks, and I listen to 3 Agatha Raisin mysteries. I'm up to I think I'm ready for number 26 or 25 of the series. So that's kind of a rabbit hole. And then I've been researching my latest Lost Lady, and I have one more hint:
Okay.
perfume bottles.
Ooh, interesting.
So I'll post about her when this podcast comes out. It'll come out on the same day. And that is my rabbit hole.
That's a cool one. I like it. So garden commissions. Do you want me to do mine first? Do you want to go
Yes,
first?
please. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to finish putting those garden beds together, although Bill just walked back outside and he's putting together yet another one. So I got to fill them with potting soil and seeds. And I'm really looking forward to that. My vegetable garden had gotten very small, but now it's very big again because I cook so much from home. And
Right.
it's really fun to go back into it. I got kind of burned out on vegetable gardening because I wrote that book. And for 2 years after writing the book, I really promoted it. And then I'll be speaking this week to the statewide Master Gardeners group, and it's in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And I promised them over a year ago, so I'm definitely going. And the interesting thing is the club, I found out I was speaking at dinner, which kind of freaked me out at
Right.
first. I went, oh dear God, no, because I'm fume reactive to meat scents, among other things. And they are making only chicken and vegetarian because so many of their members in Arkansas have alpha gal syndrome. And
Interesting.
if that doesn't tell you it's epidemic, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And she goes, "No." And she said it's been a huge kind of a discussion within the statewide group. So I'll be preparing for that. And then before I leave, I have to fix the watering system on the pots in the driveway where all these pots are going. And it's come apart, and that's a big drat. It sometimes takes a little while to get it tweaked just right. So
Right.
that, and then today, this afternoon, other than buying potting soil, I'm also going to go plant the 3 elephant ears I bought for the pond. And I'll work on that after we report today. Those have to be planted in stones, in
Right.
pebbles, because you don't want potting soil. It floats and it gets into your system. So you don't want potting soil in there. Plus, you don't want any nitrogen in your pond because you already get it from fish. That's it. How about you?
So, depending on the weather, I'm going to be weeding, watering, cutting back the fall bloomers. I haven't done that yet. Still plenty of
I'm
time
doing it
here.
still. Yeah.
It's time to start trimming back some of the lilacs and things. I have some that have gotten pretty big and I want to bring them back down into size. Got to sow
Yeah,
some
me too.
zinnia seeds, get some shrubs for my nephew. I'm also going to be picking peas, strawberries. The strawberries have been phenomenal this year. More lettuce before it bolts. And then that one of the vintage rabbit statues that I have is like a little pot in front to plant. And so it necessitates, of course, a trip to the greenhouse, which I'll probably
Absolutely.
take this afternoon to get something. I know just what I want to get to plant in there if she still has it. So that will be the week.
Whew, we are busy.
We are. Let me wrap this up. Thank you for listening to the Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. It helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
And please subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, The Garden Angelist at substack.com, which is also linked to in our show notes. If you do, you get a link to listen to the podcast a day early and you get a lot more information.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout, or you can make a one-time donation through PayPal.
Thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate this week. Bye until next time.
Bye, everybody.